Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from Singapore, Yasmine Khater. Yasmine, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Yasmine is the lead researcher and the head story coach at Sales Story Method. So, Yasmine, before we talk about Sales Story, tell me a little bit about your own background.
Yeah, so I'm half Egyptian, half Singaporean,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents met and fell in love, and I grew up in Saudi Arabia. So quite early, I started to realize that I was hearing different messages
Mm-hmm.
from my mom of who I should be, from my dad of who I should be, and from school of who should I be. So because it was really complicated to learn all these kind of different narratives,
Mm-hmm.
I actually decided to just keep quiet.
Mm.
And also school was a bit tough because I was being teased for looking different, from sounding different, all these different things.
Mm.
So most of my life, I thought something was wrong with me.
Mm.
Slowly, and then I ended up studying psychology and communications, and I realized nothing is wrong with me. This is called narrative, and narrative has multiple levels,
Mm.
and understanding how to navigate through all of those things.
Mm. Wonderful. And then what made you start a Sales Story Method?
You know, they always say when you look backwards, everything makes sense, but at the
Mm.
time, it's a bit it sounds a bit random.
Mm.
So I got a double degree in psychology and communications.
Mm.
And then I was working with companies. I had a production agency where we did storytelling for big brands.
Mm.
And eventually started asking, hey, can you train our team? Because you can obviously make effective videos,
Mm.
but videos are beautiful, but videos allow us to edit, to perfect, to show one version.
Correct.
But when you have this interaction, me and you, we don't have the rewind button or the forward button or the edit button. We need to be able to do this.
Mm.
So I started training teams around that. And when I sold my agency, I ended up just going in and just doing this full time because I realized this is the part that I love, to help people realize that the more we understand about the brain, the more we understand what people have to hear, we can be more impactful as individuals and sell our ideas effectively.
Fascinating. And, when you talk about the Sales Story Method, what is the method?
So the method starts off with understanding, first of all, our inner narrative, understanding the brain. And then from there is learning how to be able to structure and to tell stories. And then the final levels is for us to be able to enhance it by using more effective ways of influence. So that's how we look at it. It's always brain and so forth. And a couple of components that make our method quite unique is that we like to gamify the whole entire process and to shift the sale or the story to be from me focus to us, to making really the impact when it becomes all about our stakeholder. As a listener, what do they need? How can we support them? How can we help them move forward?
Interesting. So my next question to you, Yasmine, is, are salespeople born or are they trained? Very often you hear he or she is a born salesperson.
Yeah. It's interesting that you asked that question because people like to think that, and then we use in psychology the term called us versus other. Oh, they're good, they're just natural, and I am not.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a limiting kind of story. Actually, I think every single one of us was born a natural salesperson, but our whole life we've been trained not to do it. We've been trained not to ask, not to do things. So even though we were born, it might be that we come from a culture where it's not appropriate to do certain things. I know in my household, talking about money was not comfortable. So imagine for me starting my own venture, having to overcome that story. So even though that we're born naturally with full possibility, we've actually been trained our whole life not to tap into it. And a salesperson, the ones who are masterful, spend a lot of time unlearning some of that outdated story that's actually holding them back from being of service to other people.
So what you're telling me is that you're either born with it, and if you seem to have lost it because of whatever happened at home, then you can be trained to be a good salesperson.
I think we're all born with it, because if I look at a baby, there's no sign in the sky saying, Atush, you get a 10. and you get a 1. I think we're born with unlimited possibility.
Correct.
And if we are operating from that unlimited possibility, and we can help somebody also see that possibility, and we can help someone believe in that possibility, that is a masterful salesperson. But we've been trained not to do that thing, not to believe it's actually possible for ourselves. Yeah.
And why, in your opinion, is the art of storytelling so important for everyone?
Because we live in an era where people are so overwhelmed. I'm not sure about you, but the average person is dealing every single day with about 4,000 to 10,000 messages coming through their head. We have our phones, we have our device. Most people are multi-screening at the same time. So you can imagine, like, in order for us to like shortcut this, the fastest way is through stories. And it's because stories tap into not the logical brain, but the emotional brain. And when we start to understand that, we can get people to focus on areas that they actually want support on, but perhaps because of their limitations, their struggle, their stress, what they're going through is getting them stuck to do those things.
And, you know, I've often heard people say that, why should I talk about my achievements? Let my work do the talking. And I've responded that unless you tell your own story, nobody else is going to tell your story. What is your perspective on that?
So I think it's like, when I hear that question, I look at it from where that question is coming from. Some people say it where they come from a culture, like a lot of us from Asia, where we shouldn't be boastful, because people who are boastful are not humble. And then therefore we're afraid to do that. Versus when we share our experience, because it will help someone see what's possible. It helps us build a credibility, an authority to make the way we do things faster, right? There's some things that will give people the cue, especially in their overwhelmed brain, to be like, this person I should pay attention to. This person is someone investing your experience in wherever, like you worked in the British tobacco company as well as Lockheed Martin. Like, when you say you're a certain level, people are like, oh, well, clearly if he's managed a certain scope or a role or a team, then he must know something. That can help us really fast track the time that we help people make decisions. Because you don't want to, in this overwhelming experience, make them have to second guess and to doubt it.
Interesting. And, you know, when you are called in to train a team or an individual, what is the process you follow? And please do give me some examples.
Yeah, sure. So I love the example you mentioned about this. I should speak about myself. So I'll give you an example of one of the leaders that I supported actually recently. And what she was saying, the words that she was saying is, I'm a back-end leader. I'm the leader who gets stuff done. I don't just talk and, like, you know, spread like a lot of crap in the organization. I'm the one who gets things done. I'm the one who's accomplished. And when we have that, that works at a certain level of your career. But the next level of your career is not about how much you can do, it's how much you can influence and help people see things differently. And she had a team of 20 people. And when she has the experience of, I'm a back-end leader, she is doing some work that should not be doing at that level of her career. And when she's doing that work, she can't think strategically for what is the next step for the team. So when we look at some of this aspect, we look at understanding, like, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And who is important for us to move forward with? Start to realize that the gap between what we're focusing on and what we should be focusing on. And that becomes a lot more magical for us as leaders to help us develop and enhance.
Very interesting. And you also talk about you going into an organization and you are able to improve sales by applying science to the brain. Help me understand what you do.
Yeah. So the key thing, the distinction is that I want to talk about it, not just COVID, I'm talking about the trends that we have today. The way our brain processes information today versus what it processes like 5-7 years has completely changed. And the problem is we are still speaking from that perspective. We're still operating from that perspective. And the problem with that is we're not dealing with the same brain. So when we try something but we have a different circumstance, it is not as impactful. So for me, as a trained psychologist, the number one thing that I love helping people do is to feel safe and secure. And in order for us to sell our customer needs to feel safe and secure. And if you're trying to speak to them as you spoke to them before, you've lost it. Because before, in a sales conversation, when you would go into a meeting, the salesperson knew more and the seller, the receiver, knew less. So you had a lot of power because you had more information. Today, because of the internet, there is so much information circulated that when you go into a meeting, it's no longer about expert, person, receiver. It's really about collaborator. It's really about how do we build trust and connection, that you're the best version and you can offer me more value because you understand. And it's no longer about us bombarding people with crazy decks. Like I work with team and they have like these crazy decks, and I'm like, let's get clear. How would the brain feel? And they're like, oh, overwhelmed. I'm like, then don't do that to your customers. If you wouldn't want to receive it yourself, like, why would you do it to your customers? And it's really about shifting how we look at a sale and looking at how we do it very, very differently as well.
Interesting. Two more questions relating to sales story method, and then we'll move to another set of conversations. When it comes to sales and training people, over the years, how have you seen technology support you in being able to improve your own skills to be able to offer to your clients?
Yeah. So what my background, I'm also dyslexic and I discovered as an adult. So I always think that most things are complicated. And for me, when I look at the programs that we create, my number one value in them is like, how can we make them practical so they can be applied straight away? And when that's the case, it's a very different. So technology has really helped us because we're able to work with global teams without having to fly everyone into a location. So therefore, we can actually impact more people.
Right.
When we do a much more senior program for leaders, we're able to give them the space to actually record themselves and get one-on-one feedback versus in a group feedback. And especially for some leaders that are, obviously at quite senior levels, they don't want to look bad in front of their colleagues. So that gives a safe space again, because for me, like having safe buckets is really crucial. And then also to do like micro learning, like how can we give them bite-sized things per week so they can go ahead and apply and adapt and see how it impacts them. And when we do our longer programs, what's amazing is, leaders will come and they'll learn something and they will apply it in a meeting and we'll get the feedback for the next week. So we get to have that continuous learning in a way that really sticks with them because we're designing it quite differently as well.
Amazing. You also say, Yasmine, that most entrepreneurs are unable to figure out the 20%. Please explain this statement with an example.
So I'm going to say not only entrepreneurs and also sales leaders.
Okay.
So today we live in a time where there's so many ways to connect with our customers. There's so many ways to sell to our customers. We have options of like no longer just like 3 or 4. Like when I started my career, we had a trade show and we had one-on-one meetings. Today we have trade show, one-on-one webinars, like guides, all sorts of ways to do that. So when I'm working with a team, it's really about how can we focus more of the energy on the Pareto principle of the 20% generate 8% of returns.
Okay.
And that's where we get to use data to help us focus, hone in on where to go. Because if, for example, we're looking at a sales funnel and we say, oh, okay, I have a great like first contact with a client, but then beyond that, I can't get a contact with them. Oh, interesting. The number is substantially lower than what I would like. So what's happening there? Is my meeting not effective? Is my not ability to book a meeting in that first session for the follow-up call not effective? Am I not clear about the call to action for the next step? And we've got to like literally tweak some of those aspects and see how can we optimize for that number. So we live in a time of so much data that it really is beautiful to see how we can actually improve aspects of our sales process.
Fascinating. So Yasmine, I'm now going to move to your second avatar as a coach. Tell me, what got you started as a coach?
So when I studied psychology, I knew I wanted to understand myself. And then just after I graduated, actually before I graduated, my father, he had 4-stage cancer. And then sadly, he passed away.
Oh, sorry about that.
And when he passed away, like the movie The Bucket List, I'm not sure if you watched The Bucket List.
I have.
It came out. So it's basically a movie about a guy who like has a list of things he wants to do before he dies. So I thought I was going to be like good daughter to ask my dad, like what does he want to do before he goes? Because his cancer was quite severe and it had already spread. And he looked at me and he answered not what I expected. Because I was thinking we're going to go travel somewhere, we're going to eat some food, something. But his answer was 4 words. He said, I've done it all.
Wow.
And I remember being really confused because I was like 20. I was like, Poppy, tell me the answer. Like, I don't understand why you're making it complicated. But like I didn't get it. So after he passed away, it was the first few years were very hard because like in my mind, like he's supposed to be there on my life journey.
Yeah.
Not just go away. He was only 55, so quite young. So I ended up discovering coaching. And what I liked about coaching versus just traditional therapy is that coaching was really more about the future. It was more about sitting in the space of possibility. And when I had discovered that from hiring my first coach, I'm like, oh, I want to learn this. So I got certified in a program. I was probably the youngest one in that program because everyone else was like in their mid-30s. And there's like this 20-year-old girl who's like having a crisis already in her life because I experienced loss. And that was really the beginning. It was really like not something I thought I would do, but just because I got pulled in that direction. And my style when I work with a leader, it's really about how do we create a safe space. That it's not about you being right or wrong, but it's really about understanding, is this current behavior, attitude, decision serving you or not serving you?
Right.
Because if it's not serving you, we have to go and look at it again. And I'm sure in your leadership journey, you've had to revise how you led because like it's not like I'm the leader today and I'm the leader forever. It's like I'm a leader today because it works today, but tomorrow I might have to be a different kind of leader. So that's how I look at when I work with a leader. And then the last part of that is how do we amplify the impact and sell our ideas more effectively so that we can really be that change maker in the organization.
Very interesting. And when you look at your own background, multicultural family, studied in Saudi Arabia, psychologist, living in Singapore, what would you say has been the impact of your own background when it comes to your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
So I think it's because I had a really tough upbringing in terms of not knowing where I belonged. And I kept on thinking that someone would tell me. And I think a big part is that no one's going to tell us the answers. It's like we have to sometimes at one point decide. So that really shapes it. And also because I struggle with my voice, I struggle with selling, I struggle with getting myself out there. I come from a space of really compassion where it's not like I'm the expert, I was born the expert, so listen to me. It's more like wherever you are is where we start. Wherever you want to go is where you want to go. And I think those are the things that bring a lot of clients to me. A lot of them are global leaders, so they understand that like there's a need. Even if you were raised only in India, you go to a different country, you have to be a different kind of leader. It's just sadly how it is.
Correct.
And also the beauty of how it is as well.
Very interesting. So time for 2 more questions. My next question to you is about the young leaders, the millennials, the Gen Z leaders who are now getting into positions of authority and leadership in large organizations. I'm from the baby boomers generation.
Yeah.
What would you say, Yasmine, are the areas the young leaders need to be coached in?
I love how you asked me this question because last week I ran a program for the youngest leader that I've run a program for, which is the age of 12.
Wow.
First time ever. I ran a program to help 12-year-old girls learn how to sell. And then I ran a program for young adults, like the young professionals from 21 to 25. So like I don't typically support that group, but it was really fun to be in it. And I think one of the areas is around the story of I'm too young. Because a lot of us will come into our career thinking I'm not experienced enough, I'm too young, I don't have much to add. And because disruption is the new norm, it means that actually all of them have equal playing ground.
Correct.
To really step up into roles that didn't exist even like 1, 2, 3 years ago. So it's really about tapping into that area of personal power and realizing that, hey, I actually have an opportunity. I actually have the ability, and I can actually change a lot of impact and make a lot of lives different. And even, for example, not only in that, but also in the like companies also on their mission of being more inclusive. And that requires inclusivity, not just in gender, but much more than that. So this is a space where I think a lot of young leaders gets the chance to go ahead of stepping into their power, realizing, hey, I can do a lot more. And then, of course, like there's some leadership skills that you need to still learn, like in terms of managing, communicating, how do you make teams feel safe and so forth. But I think the fundamental is letting go of that narrative that I am too young, I don't have much to offer. I'm a listener versus I'm a contributor and a collaborator.
Wow. Great response. Thank you. And my last question to you now, Yasmine, and this is for the many, many young people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own incredible journey, all your knowledge, experience, what would you say are 3 learnings or 3 lessons you want our viewers and listeners to take away from our conversation?
I think the first one is that you have so much more potential than you think you can. And I think a lot of times we forget that. Like if I look back at like 15-year-old me and what I'm doing today, I would like not even think it was possible. So I think the first lesson is really like, don't underestimate where you are. Where you are today is not who you're going to be in 1 year from now. And things can change really, really fast.
Correct.
The second thing is invest in your learning. The fact that you're hearing this podcast right now, it means that you're seeding yourself with ideas on how things can be different.
Yeah.
And that has become for me like a seed of really my growth, is that every day I invest in learning. I learn a different way, and I learn that the way I saw the world today may be completely different tomorrow, and that's okay. And that makes you a lot more humble to realize that, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I can still make a massive difference. And the third and final one is really about taking action. It's really about trying before you're ready, being okay with failing, because magic only happens when we are playing the game. And if we're not even in the game, then we don't even have any hope.
Amazing. And on that note, Yasmine, and your 3 amazing lessons, you have so much more potential than you actually think you have. Second one was invest in your own learning. I think that is so important to be able to keep on understanding how the world is changing every single day. Your third one was take action, which, or as the Nike line says, just do it. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey, about the sales story method. Thank you for sharing with me what your dad said. And I think that's such a profound line. We said, when he said to you, I've done it all. I mean, I don't know how many people can actually say that, but he must have been an amazing individual to actually have said something like, I've done it all to his daughter. Thank you also for talking to me about your coaching philosophies and the areas that you think young people need to get some coaching in. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.